Okay, boys and girls, on this lesson we are on page 250 in your math book. We are discussing similar figures, congruent figures, and congruent line segments. You can see we have some figures here, some polygons. These are all quadrilaterals because they're all four sides. And what you're noticing whenever we're looking at this is that they'll all have the same degrees as for their angles. See, this is 110 degrees, 70 degrees, 110 degrees, 70 degrees, 70 degrees, 110, 70 degrees, 110 degrees. These are similar figures because even though they all have the same size angles, they're the exact same shape, but they're not the same size. So if you have a similar figure, they will be the exact same shape with the same size angles and everything, but they're not going to be the same size. So you can see that our blue quadrilateral is very much smaller than our yellow one. These figures are similar, and in order to compare them and say they're similar, you just draw a little squiggly line, just like that. It kind of just goes a little swiggle to it. That means they're similar. When you have two shapes that are the exact same shape and they are the exact same size, then they are called congruent figures. To show that something is congruent, that means they're equal. They're the same. So you will draw your equal sign and then you put the little squiggly line above it. So that symbol right there shows that these two figures are congruent. Now, whenever you're talking about congruent line segments, this is a rectangle. And we have line segment AB, and that's going to be congruent to line segment DC. To show that those line segments are congruent, you would write line AB is congruent to line DC. Same thing for line AD and BC. Those two lines on this rectangle are congruent. So you can see they used the symbol, they were congruent. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be comparing some figures on numbers 10, 11, 12, and 13. These two shapes here, are they similar? Are they congruent? Or would you have congruent line segments? Go ahead and answer that now. Good. These two shapes are congruent. So you should draw your equal sign and then your squiggly line above it because those are congruent figures. Now let's look at these triangles. Both of them have a right angle. They look like they are the same size. They look like they are the same shapes. So what would you say? Are these similar or are these congruent? Go ahead and answer now. Good. These two shapes are also congruent. So you need to draw your equal sign and then the little squiggly sign above it. Now let's look at number 12. You have two squares. We know they are both squares, but are they the same size? No, they're not. That means that these are similar figures. So whenever you're comparing them and you say, you know what, they're both squares, but they're not the same size, they are just similar. So you just draw one little squiggly line there. Then on number 13, you are comparing line segment WZ right here to line segment XY. Are those the same size? Are they the same length? Yes, they are. So you're going to draw your equal sign with the squiggly line above it because those two line segments are congruent. Now, if you look here in your blue box, we're going to be talking about shapes and their positions. So this is called a translation, and that's when the figure slides to another position. You just move it down, or you may move it up. You're sliding it. A rotation means that it's from a fixed point. The figure turns clockwise or counterclockwise. So pretend like I took a pin and I stuck it here in this corner, and then I just took it and I could slide it or I could sling it around. And it even shows with that little half circle with an arrow. That is a rotation. Then the next one we have is called reflection. Reflection means that you have a figure, a shape, and then pretend like you folded your paper in half and it was wet paint and it would make the stamp on the other side. So the figure flips across a line of reflection. It's almost like we did those things, it's lines of symmetry. You may have put paint on one side and you folded your paper on the other side and you stamped the paint on the other side of your paper and it will show your line of symmetry. Even though this is not an exact line of symmetry, it is showing that this shape is reflected just upside down exactly the same. So what we're doing here on numbers 14, 15, and 16, you're going to tell me, is this showing a translation, rotation, or reflection? Kind of look at your arrows, look at the examples we have in the blue box, and go ahead and fill that out now. Okay, so we're going to go through these together. On number 14, we're seeing that we have that little half circle, blue arrow. It looks like we took that figure and we just started rotating it around. And it's even in the definition when I said, in my example when I described it, it rotated around. So this is going to be rotation. Then let's look at our next one. We have this blue figure and we just slid it down. What is that one going to be? Good. That one is translation. And then we have this figure here. It looks like home plate and it just reflected onto the other side. So you should have written what for this one? I'll skip mine over a little bit. Good. Reflection. Okay, so that's all that we have to do for today. If you have any questions, just comment below and I will do my best to get them answered until we completely understand. I love y'all. Miss you.